Welcome back. Alright, we're continuing our discussion here with the adjustment layers that affect white balance, contrast, tonalities, and we're using this image here in Smoky Mountain National Park to do so. Alright, so let's click with this levels. Go ahead and click on the adjustment icon, and we get this display here. Notice we have a histogram built in to our box here, so we no longer need to see this. Let's go ahead and right click, close that tab group. There's quite a lot going on in this particular adjustment layer box, so let's take a look. We'll just start at the top and go down. Here's how we can restore the defaults, or as we saw earlier, we could restore the defaults by clicking here. We can make the overall image darker. We can increase the contrast. We can lighten the image. And we have all sorts of options we can apply in here. Again, these usually aren't that useful to us because we're trying to do something specific, and these broad strokes of adjustments may not apply. We can try let's reset this. We can try the auto button. And that actually did quite a nice job. Notice, let's toggle our preview on and off. That did quite a nice job of sorting out the color balance. Notice the water looks a little better, not so cool, not so blue. And our tonalities throughout the whole image look really nice. Our darks are dark, but not too dark. We've got some nice, we've opened up our midtones a bit in here, and our lights have brightened up a bit. It's a real nice change. The auto actually works well in this particular image. We can actually see what it did on our histogram too. Let's go ahead and reset to see the way it was before. Now if we don't like the auto, we can come in here and work these sliders. This is working the highlights. Often I want my highlights, which are right here now, often I want those to be almost white, especially if they're clouds or white areas of water. So I can move that back to make them white. Let's see what we've done. Just a slight adjustment there. I can work with my midtones by moving this slider here around. Take these back. Hey, something to notice here. Let's just reset this for a moment. If you grab the slider and move it to the left, notice the midtone slider is also moving, but that the dark slider is not. Real nice way to control much of the image without controlling the other parts. Or I can take the dark slider and move it darker. Really wouldn't want to do that in this image, but if the image was a little too light, this might work. And notice my highlights are not moving. It's my midtones and darks that are moving. So anyway, so let's go ahead and reset this. That we just did. So let's move this back here, and perhaps I wanted to lighten my midtones a little bit more. I can continue to do that here. If I wanted to adjust, and I never do this, but if I wanted to adjust things on the output, I could do that as well. But I never adjust down here. I'm always making my adjustments on this slider, the top slider here. Note, we can also make adjustments to individual channels if we wanted to. Not that you're going to probably do this too often. You might make a few though. Later on in the intermediate item discussion, I will show you how I make a few individual color channel adjustments and why I might do that. So there's all sorts of things you can do on here, lots of individual control. So I'm going to reset this, and now we're going to talk about these eyedroppers. These eyedroppers work really well in the levels adjustment and curves adjustment, and let's show you what they do. If you hover over one of the eyedroppers, it'll actually tell you what it does. Samples in image to set black point. Press the Alt key to display the settings, how the adjustment's working. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's click on this. Let's come over to a dark part of the image and just click. Didn't see much happen, did we? Let's sample the white. Let's click on the white. Set sample, sample in image to set white point. We saw a little bit more effect there. When we clicked on it, we saw, let's toggle that on and off, we saw that the white balance straightened out quite a bit, and that our curve, let's reset that, and then our curve stretched out. Because our white point, we already had a black point, we clicked on it, so it didn't adjust much. But our white point, right up here, our white point was not our brightest point was not actually white. So when we click on, whatever we click on, so let's choose this, whenever we click on something down here, it says, okay, that's what you want, white, great, I'm going to shove that area and everything above it up to white. So if we click kind of a medium tone area over here, it makes that the white point, and everything above it gets burned out, and everything else below it gets stretched up. So you want to be real careful that you click on something that you want to be white. So let's reset that and look at that another way. We're going to click on it to set our white point. And we'll just go into here, click. Now if we hold the Alt key down, we're seeing the area that is white and the area that's burned out. Let's zoom into that a little bit. If we're doing inkjet prints, these areas that are pure white are going to get absolutely no ink sprayed in that area. And that may look funny at certain angles. So the idea here is to get in as tight as possible and to make that area as small as possible, so that the entire image gets a coating of some of the inks going on there. That will make the image look as uniform as possible without this weird gap in the image of no ink being applied. Now notice I'm having a real hard time getting it any smaller. If we right click on the image, we'll see how we're actually sampling it. And we're not doing a point sample right here, we're doing a 3x3 average, which is often the best choice. If you want to, you can change it to point, hold the Alt key down, or zoom in, hold the Alt key down, and try to get one of these points, which will, yeah, there we go, we've got one, that will now really remove any possibility of a portion of the image not having ink sprayed on it. So let's look at the whole image here. We're going to hit the Z tool, Z on the keyboard, right click, fit on screen. We're going to select the white point, click, yeah, and that's everything now is going to get some ink coated on it. Let's see if we're improving this image at all. Yes, we are. Let's see what happens with the black. If we have too much that's showing black, we'll get big pools of black. So we don't want, let me show you what I mean. If I hold the Alt key down, it's not too bad at all. We did a really good first choice. Actually, this is going to look pretty good. If, for example, we chose something wrong, well, that would be wrong. If we chose something like this, well, we've got a possibility of an awful lot of black pooling right in here. So let's use the scroll wheel to zoom in. Let's try to remove some of that. Point by point, let's try something a little different. And sometimes there becomes a point where that is as good as you can get, and that may be our case here. There we go. Ah, there we go. So let's hit the Z for zoom tool, fit on screen. And now we've adjusted our white point and our black point. It's going to print with ink in a very nice fashion. If we're doing a wet chemistry photograph, this really doesn't matter as much. But for ink printing, this makes a big difference. So that is the levels adjustments. We've ignored this gray one here, and if I were doing my work on this image, that would probably be about all I do. But let's say we weren't so concerned about our white points and our black points. Perhaps we're going to do a wet chemistry photograph. We can set something, sample in the image to set gray point. If we knew, let's say, that this rock right here was gray, we could click on it and it would set our color temperature to whatever you click is going to be a gray point. So if we click on an area that's here we go, that is a yellow or warm point, it's going to adjust it so it is now a gray point. Notice how it changes the color balance in the entire image. So the idea, if you have maybe a gray wall in the image or a gray rock like we kind of have right over here, If we click on it, that's going to set the white balance very much the same way it did in Adobe Camera Raw. And again, here's how we used to do it before Adobe Camera Raw had these tools in it. But this is some fine tuning you can do here in Photoshop.